we were terrified that it was going to be hard to manage it from far away.
Yeah, so we live in South Carolina. Our property is actually in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We were a little afraid that we wouldn't be able to get there and manage it appropriately, and that somebody else, if we gave somebody else the control to be able to do that, they wouldn't do it as well as we would.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel like it's going?
Pretty well. Yeah, honestly, at this point, there's really nothing that happens at the property that I don't feel like our maintenance team could go take care of for us.
Welcome to STR Unlocked, a podcast for driven vacation rental investors looking to gain the freedom that comes with an abundance of time and money.
I'm April.
And I'm Nathan.
Our life is busy with 3 small children, full-time jobs, and not nearly enough coffee. And we're unlocking success with short-term rental investing every single day. Join us in our journey as we learn and grow together.
If we can do it, so can you.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of STR Unlocked. We're glad that you're here with us. If you are here with us, you're probably either an investor who's interested in short-term rentals or you're currently self-managing, because that's really what we talk a lot about here on the podcast. I'm joined today by my beautiful wife, April. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. I have now got fresh coffee from our last recording. So I'm excited to talk to you today about the 3 biggest misconceptions we had when it came to owning, operating, managing a short-term rental.
Yeah. So when we first got into short-term rentals, first got interested in short-term rentals, it was probably 4 months before we actually pulled the trigger and purchased one. So there were a lot of times for us to think, right? To sit and think, to have these conversations where we're like, are you sure we really want to do this? Like, is this the right move? I'm sure everybody out there has also done the same thing if they've been in it, or maybe you're currently having these conversations.
Yeah, we were telling ourselves some really awful stories and probably had a few nightmares in between the two of us.
But, we still did it, right? We still pulled the trigger, and come to find out some of these things that we believed that we thought were going to be problems really weren't.
Are not true.
Or if they are problematic, they're not big problems. They're solvable things.
100%.
So let's talk about those. The very first one, I think that this was probably one that you struggled with a little bit more than I did.
Yeah.
But having somebody else be in your house and ruining your things. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the things that was really challenging for me in the beginning was the idea that, we're purchasing this beautiful home. And I'm excited to bring my kids there. I'm excited for us to kind of start a family tradition of being able to visit, have a place to go. And initially, I was really kind of attached to it. And I was thinking like, it's our house, right? Like, it's our house. To get past that, I had to think of it more like we're managing a motel, like or a hotel or whatever. Like, it's a business. And I had to think about it that way to kind of detach myself from the concept a little bit, because we're relatively clean people. I don't like things to be disorganized. I don't like stains on things. When I go to hotels, I hate, sitting on a chair if that chair looks and feels gross, and the idea of like people coming through our rental multiple times a month, many times a month, in some cases, especially over summertime, I just didn't like that idea. I really wanted my stuff to be clean, and I wanted my stuff to be protected, and I wanted to take care of my stuff. And what's interesting about it, though, is that it was a misconception that we had. I mean, it's turned out that it's not true at all, that it was kind of a negative story we're telling ourselves that really wasn't based in a whole lot of fact.
Now, I will say, like, there are some guests out there that really are gross.
Sure.
There are going to be people that they're on vacation. They just don't want to clean up after themselves. And that's fine. Like, that's their prerogative. They've paid for it. I think that the thing that we put in place, though, that helps.
As long as you don't break my stuff.
Yeah. Even if you break it, we can fix it, Nathan. I promise we can. But the thing that we put in place to be able to mitigate that is we hired great cleaners. So I've seen other people talk about their cleaners. We've stayed in Airbnbs that were really, really clean. We've stayed in Airbnbs that were a little questionable. And the difference comes down to how well that place is maintained. So not just from a maintenance perspective and fixing things when they're broken, if they happen to get broken by a guest and replaced, but also how well is that place cleaned? Because if you're cleaning it consistently and every single time it's being cleaned thoroughly, then this becomes less and less of a problem. So we have boots on the ground to be able to help us clean those properties, be able to look for damaged things that we can replace them. And we've only had to replace a couple of things. I think that we had a bedspread that went missing, and then we also had a couple broken lamps. Both of those times we were able to, replace those very easily. We were able to put in claims where claims were needed and be able to get those replaced. So for the most part, we haven't had any problems with people just maliciously breaking things, right? Like I know that this happens. That hasn't been our experience yet, but it certainly hasn't happened nearly as often as we were telling ourselves it would happen before we actually got a rental.
Right. And I think the other thing that has really helped us kind of get over this issue was that we found we found some cleaners. We found a company that we partnered with, that we work with now, who every single stay after they do a clean, they always upload photos. Yes. And so while you can't and you shouldn't have like a Ring camera on the inside of the home, we don't. It does give us a lot of peace of mind, because after every guest leave, we get to see a new photo of the living room. After every guest leaves, we get to see a new photo of the bedroom, of the kitchen, of the upstairs, the downstairs. We kind of get to have this consistent peace of mind that, oh, okay, the place hasn't burned down.
Right. It's fine.
It's fine. It's okay. And so I think that's been something else that's really helped. If you're using cleaners who don't do that, maybe look at, switching out, finding somebody new, or, asking to see if they can do that for you. Just send you photos. The way ours works is they will clean a room and then essentially take a photo of the room.
The other thing that we have is we have an inspector that will come in behind them and just check to make sure that those things are happening.
Yeah.
Right. So we have cleaners. We trust our cleaners. Like, they're a great company. There's only so many things that you can see in photos, right? There are other things that you could only see if there's dust under the bed, for example. Like, the cleaner's not going to take a photo of the dust under the bed. That's probably not the thing that would keep the cabin maintained and the property maintained. But maybe there's mildew in the shower and you can't necessarily see the mildew in the shower from photos, but somebody coming in and checking behind them just as a way to ensure that the quality is high from our cleanings, that person is able to let us know if there are any issues that need to be, remedied before the next guest comes.
100%. And I think really the thing that we learned through the process, or through this time that we've had the rental, is that, and we mentioned this on the prior episode, so you can go back and feel free to check this out on one of the prior episodes when we're talking about the cleaners. I think that the thing that probably helps ensure that we don't have more problems than we do is when guests enter that property, they understand that we respect the property. The level that we're ensuring that the property is cleaned, is well maintained. They don't walk in and see different color light bulbs. They don't walk in and see, something on the floor or a dirty towel, none of that happens. They understand that on our end, we respect not only our property, but we also respect the experience that we're trying to give them. We're paying attention to the small things, and we're trying to ensure that they have the amazing vacation that they paid for. And I think when people walk in and they get a sense of that respect and they get a sense of that intentionality, they pay that back to you. I think generally speaking, we've had a few mishaps. We've had a few lamps get knocked over and we've replaced, but for the most part, we haven't had any issues.
And that wasn't intentional.
And that wasn't intentional,
accidents happen. You have to be able to account for that.
Right.
That wasn't just somebody going in and being angry and knocking something over.
And I think probably another thing, which I do agree with generally for the most part, is that the property is priced at a point where, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of parties, right? Like, you're not going to get that kind of demographic. And we also screen for that in the process. If I think we've actually turned down bachelor parties before who's wanted to come. So, those kind of things are in place to prevent massive problems from happening to any great extent. All right, so let's talk about the second thing, which is kind of a big deal, which is we were terrified that it was going to be hard to manage it from far away.
Yeah, so we live in South Carolina. Our property is actually in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And so for us to jump in a car, we could get there in a day. It's about 3.5 hours away. But if there's ever an issue where the guest needs something needs to be delivered, or there's a problem at the property, we were a little afraid that we wouldn't be able to get there and manage it appropriately, and that somebody else, if we gave somebody else the control to be able to do that, they wouldn't do it as well as we would.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you feel like it's going?
Pretty well. Yeah. Honestly, at this point, there's really nothing that happens at the property that I don't feel like our maintenance team could go take care of for us. So if anything comes up, as a matter of fact, didn't we have a recent situation? The Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That's a great example. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So we had a guest that stayed this past weekend. They complained about the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi was really slow. They weren't able to connect. And if you have kids, because they have kids, you know that if the Wi-Fi goes down, like your vacation is not going to be enjoyable. So we were really looking to get that Wi-Fi updated for them. But just like here at our home, if something goes wrong, like we're going to call a professional to come out and fix it for us, right? So whether we are here, standing, looking over their shoulder or not, there's a professional that's taking care of that problem for us. So we were able to call our maintenance team to come out to the property. They talked with the
internet service provider,
the internet service provider to be able to troubleshoot, and they were able to get that done. So this person, somebody else went out, they fixed it for our guest. Our guest was then happy. And so we got that problem fixed. Mm-hmm. We've also had today, actually, we had an electrician go out and look at an issue that we're having with some of the lights tripping the breaker. And so we called somebody out. They're out there right now. They remotely access the home through a code that we provided them. Kind of, that's the thing, that's how it happens in Gatlinburg, is that typically there's a remote lock and a code's given out, and those professionals in the area, they know that they're just going to go in and probably have an empty house. They're going to do their work and then they're going to leave. So having to manage that from far away, it hasn't been as problematic as I thought that it would. And so a couple of things that we've done to help mitigate that risk is, number one, we have remote door locks. So I can go in at any point in time, I can add codes, I can delete codes, I can see when those codes were used.
Yeah, you literally just check to see if the electrician had been there or not.
I did, yeah. So, and I can remotely lock the house. So I can check at any point in time, like, is the house locked? Is it not locked? Because we do have some people that just forget to press the button. So I can remotely lock the house if I need to. The other thing that we have is a camera on the outside of the house. So you mentioned a minute ago, having the pictures from the inside that our cleaners send. Again, we do not have any cameras on the inside of the property. That's not allowed.
Very creepy. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. You'll get kicked off, and it's very creepy. But we also have a camera on the outside of the house, and it's pointed at the door, so we can see who comes and goes. If there is somebody that's at the property that's not supposed to be there, we can see that. So we have a little bit more security there to be able to just check to make sure that everything's going okay, right? Making sure that there's not somebody at the property that shouldn't be there. So it just gives us a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more control over the situation, even though we're not right there next to the property. 100%. And I'll also say the fact that we are 3.5 hours away, and I physically cannot jump in the car and go take care of the problem myself, has been it's been tremendously
liberating
helpful for me. Yes, because I am a control freak. I want to be able to control every single situation. And if I physically cannot go and do that, then it's just one less thing that I have to worry about and one less thing that I have to, force myself not to do.
Yeah, what's interesting is we've learned, and this is a part of the reason why we invest in the markets that we invest in, is because they're used to this. There's infrastructure there that's built around understanding how short-term rentals work, how tourism in the area overall works. When we send somebody out, for instance, that whole issue with the internet could have been a disaster if the company and if the person who was going out there didn't have a little bit of a customer service to them, right? They didn't know how to interact with guests and, knocking before they enter. I mean, every house that they go to, they treat it basically like it's a hotel, and they kind of know the protocol and the, what's that word? Like customs, maybe. How to approach situations like that is really, really, really important. And that's given us a lot of confidence to really just give them a call. And if anything comes up, they go out and they take care of it, even as something which maybe isn't super complex, but even something that's as complex as troubleshooting our internet service,
Yeah. And I'll also say that choosing the people to be your boots on the ground, choosing the people to be your cleaners and to be your maintenance people really is critical. Yeah. If you're managing in an area where you're not able to be that person there, so you're more than 30 minutes away, for example, you need to have confidence in the people that are doing the business for you, that they're going to do a great job, they're going to do it professionally, and that they're going to be able to fix the problem the first time. So these people that are interacting with your guests, they're an extension of your business. They're a representation of you.
Well said.
And so if you are trying to provide this high, quality experience, you're making sure that you're providing great customer service. You don't want somebody who's going to show up in, ragged jeans and a dirty t-shirt. You want somebody who looks presentable. You want somebody who's going to be able to interact with your guests well. So if you're managing remotely, make sure that the people that you are hiring are going to represent your business and represent it well.
That is a lot of what I just said, but said way better. So thank you. That's a really good point. No, it's like super well said. That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the third misconception that we both had, which is, and again, that we found isn't true, that there is oversaturation, right? Like there is so many properties in this area. There's so many places on Airbnb that we'll never be able to make the money to cover the mortgage, to pay for the expenses, and to make the profit that we need to make in order for the investment to make sense. So talk to us a little bit about that. What have we found?
Yeah. So, anytime that you make a big purchase, right, your number one fear, at least for me, is, okay, are we going to be able to pay for this? Is this the right decision? Are we going to be able to be successful? What we found initially was that, we're kind of getting our bearings, we were getting our feet underneath us, and we were learning a lot. But once we got through that initial phase, that initial, learning curve, what we found is that there's a lot of people that come into the area. We are investing in areas that are heavy on tourism and that are heavy on short-term rentals. So there's always going to be a demand there. The second thing is that if there's a demand there and there are properties that, are doing really, really well, and then there's also going to be properties that are going to be doing poorly, you just need to do better than the majority of everybody else.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
I honestly haven't thought about it like that.
You just have to do it better than everybody else. So if you have a lot of competition, you got to make sure that they're actually your competition. Are they going to be managing it themselves, or are they hiring a management company to be able to, service that property for them? And there's nothing wrong with management companies. I'm not knocking them at all. However, I will say that in my opinion, properties are managed best by the people who own them because they're invested. It's your property, right? You are providing that experience. A property manager, they should be managing it well, right? But they may not be putting as much attention and as much detail and thought behind what they're offering at your property because it's honestly just not theirs. So they don't have the investment there. Again, nothing wrong with property managers, nothing wrong with people that want to use a property manager instead of doing it themselves. But for us, if we have more control, then we have more control, right? We can adjust the pricing where necessary. We can add more amenities. We can do analysis on Rank Breeze to make sure that we are showing up appropriately. We can adjust our prices to make sure that we're making all that extra money. So all of that stuff, we're doing it better than our competition. And so you have to, number one, buy in those markets where you are going to have the demand and you are going to have the ability to provide a better experience than the rest of your competition, or at least the majority of your competition, because you only need a small sliver. So for Gatlinburg, for example, I believe that there's 14 million people that come to the Smoky Mountains.
At its peak, average is more like 12. But
all right, so 12 to 14. But
it's a lot of people.
But 12 to 14 million, okay, right. 12 to 14 million.
Right.
If there are 10,000 cabins, which there's not, but let's just say 10,000 cabins, you still have enough places for all those 14 million people or those 12 million people, right? And that's if every single place were booked, and they're not. So there's a lot of places that I've seen when I've done competitive analysis and I've looked at our competition that aren't priced appropriately, or their photos are really terrible, or their description's not good, or they're on page 25 instead of page 5, and so they're just not being seen. So what I suspect, because I don't know this for sure, but what I suspect is that for those people that are screaming about the market being saturated and now they don't have any bookings, what I suspect is that in 2020 and 2021, there was a lot of demand in the area, right? Everybody was cooped up because of COVID. They couldn't easily travel. There was a lot of travel restrictions, and they didn't necessarily want to stay in hotels. So they wanted to stay in Airbnbs. And that meant that you just didn't have to work as hard for bookings.
For sure.
Right? Because there was a lot more demand, there was less supply. And so,
Yeah. And over the last couple of years, because of that demand, because everybody saw that it was a credible opportunity, that the massive cash flow people were getting, and in addition to all the other incredible benefits of real estate, there has been more supply going online on Airbnb over the last few years since 2020, 2021. The thing, though, that we found is that people are generally being sold a bit of a lie. And that is, I literally saw someone, an influencer, I saw an ad in my Facebook feed the other day that was basically touting Airbnb as a passive source of income. It's not passive. It's
you
not
can't just list it and have people book it.
Right. This is not a simple, you're owning and you're operating a small business here, and you have to think of it and treat it like it's a small business. Now, it's a small business that we spend very little time on each week, right? So that's cool. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who believe they're going to make a lot of money by buying a property, taking some photos, putting it on Airbnb, and then waiting for the tsunami of cash to roll in. And that's honestly the mentality that they have, and that's not the case at all. And we've been talking, I think at this point we're probably like 10 episodes deep or 15 episodes deep on this podcast, but like we have found that it takes a lot of intentionality, a lot of understanding the market, a lot of understanding the travel habits of the target people that you are marketing your property to. For us, it's generally speaking large groups, families, those kind of things, and ensuring that you're positioning the property well, positioning the property in alignment with the person that you're looking to book. That's incredibly important. And so all of that takes, honestly, a good deal of research, right? We bought our property, we stuck it up on Airbnb, we weren't getting any results. Right. We got that initial push out the gate, because Airbnb, if you don't know this, when you put up a property on Airbnb, they will automatically give you a push on Airbnb. You will be in the top few pages of Airbnb right off the bat, because they need to see if your property is relevant and valuable to the people that they have booking. They're trying to get that data on your property because they don't know. The only way that they do know is to throw it up there, give it a little bit of a push, put it in the front of the pack, and see, are people clicking on your listing, and then are they booking your listing? And that's what they're looking at. And there's some other variables in there, like how long they're spending on that page and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, that's really what they're trying to evaluate. And so there's a lot of people that when you put up your Airbnb at first, those first couple of weeks, you'll get some bookings, right? You'll be like, whoa, like this is awesome. This is incredible. But then after those few weeks, just like we experienced, you'll see a massive dip. We saw a massive dip. We weren't getting any bookings. That's when we started the journey to really understanding this is a small business. We were very, very beneficial that we really took the things that we've learned from the other businesses that we've spent years doing, and we were able to take that kind of that approach and that mentality and that information that we've learned from all the other businesses that we have to apply it to this one, and it's worked out for us in a big way. So to wrap up the conversation, to talk about a market being saturated, it was a fear that we had. It's a fear a lot of people have. That does not mean you can't be successful. Is it oversaturated? Well, it depends on the person. Like that's the answer, right? If you're an operator and you're an investor who does not want to spend time on it, it might be oversaturated for you. Yes. And that's okay. Go find another market that you don't have to work as hard in. Find another market where there's more opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're an investor who's interested in doing it well, and you're interested in positioning your property accordingly,
and spending the time
on it, which again is not a massive amount of time. I'm not trying to say that you should be spending 5+ hours a week or anything, but I'm just saying it takes time to own and operate a vacation rental at a high level. It does take time. It's not a passive source of income. And if you treat it like it's a passive source of income, you're going to be sorely disappointed, and you will feel like the market is oversaturated for sure. So this is kind of what we've learned. These are probably the big 3 things that we were talking earlier. Like we had a lot of fears, just like any other beginning investor does. We had kind of stepped into the world of long-term rentals. And when we had gotten to the point to looking at short-term rentals, we were really confident that we could make it work, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have fears. And these were kind of our top 3 fears that we found were actually not true at all. It's actually not something to be concerned about. So, are you glad that we did it?
I am 100% glad that we did it. I would do it all over again.
100%. I mean, it's been life-changing for our family. So guys, hopefully this conversation was helpful for you in some small way. Again, just like every podcast that we record, we are only sharing what we have learned in our journey so far. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the right way or this way will work for you. We're just sharing with you what's worked for us, and hopefully it'll serve you in some small way. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening, giving us your time and attention. It means the world to us. We hope that you have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time.
Talk next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Hopefully this was really helpful to you in your journey of building a business. If you like what you heard, please click subscribe and go to iTunes and give us a rating. That helps us out tremendously when we're producing, hopefully, content of huge value to you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I hope that you have an amazing week. Go out there and crush it. I'll see you soon.